Hey, Sarah here. Today we're going to try to understand Hunter x Hunter chapters 351 to 357, which covers the entirety of Hisoka's fight against Chrollo in Heaven's Arena, which is the last setup event before the voyage begins. Spoiler warnings for the entirety of the manga from this point onwards. I will be referring to past and future events while talking about these chapters, so if you care about spoilers, please click off now and perhaps pick up a volume to read when you have the time. You definitely won't regret it. It's such a good manga, honestly. I've also linked a little hype edit Jump published on their YouTube channel to promote this fight below because it's just so cool. Love their little edits that they've been doing recently. Synopsis and context. For a bit of background information, Hisoka and Chrollo are two major antagonists of the series. Hisoka being a creepy, powerful, bloodthirsty magician who enjoys fighting strong opponents, and Chrollo being the leader of a group of murderous thieves known as the Spiders. Hisoka was actually a part of the Spiders for a while. He initially joined for a chance to fight Chrollo, but some plot events happened and he never got the opportunity in Your Canoe. Now, with Chrollo having undergone a Nen exorcism and unsealed his Nen powers once more, he finally agreed to fight. They're both floor masters in Heaven's Arena, which is like a battle royale tower, and floor masters have the right to challenge each other to battles in the space itself. So Chrollo arranged the time and place for their showdown. This is an extremely technical fight that spans 6 entire chapters. Specific Nen terms are unavoidable for explaining this section. So if you just want the TLDR summary of what happens in one sentence, please skip ahead to the section labeled chapter 357 because honestly, all you need is one sentence to understand how the outcome of this fight specifically connects to future events on the boat. The technicalities just aren't really necessary in this case, but they are interesting, so I'll try my best to explain them. Chapter 351. Hisoka has long since been one of the strongest Nen users in the series. We continually see him defeating his opponents without breaking a sweat. In fact, he loves battling so much that he helps those he sees potential in grow stronger in hopes of one day having a satisfying fight. Hisoka's Nen abilities are Bungee Gum and Texture Surprise. Bungee Gum allows him to attach his sticky aura to objects and whip them around, like they're attached to rubber bands. Famously, Hisoka always describes his aura as having both the properties of rubber and gum. It's elastic and sticky, sort of like Spider-Man's webs, and he can also attach strands to the ceiling and pull himself around in a similar way. Texture Surprise is less combat-oriented, but more thematic with his trickster magician personality. By applying a layer of aura over an object or body part, he can create an illusion so the surface appears differently. For example, in Your Canoe, he placed a layer of Texture Surprise over a piece of paper, altering the writing on the paper to fool others. Chrollo, on the other hand, is definitely portrayed as more mysterious and mastermind-esque. Just like a spider, he often pulls strings from the shadows and seldom puts himself in unfavorable situations, preferring to strategize ahead of time. His ability Bandit Secret is a blank book, which allows him to steal and use others' abilities. However, the many conditions make it difficult to steal abilities in the middle of battles. For this fight, as Chrollo was the one who decided the time and place, he has had plenty of time to prepare to gather suitable abilities for countering Hisoka in particular, so he's definitely playing to his strengths here. In the middle of a large stage in Heaven's Arena complete with hundreds of spectators, Chrollo and Hisoka face off, agreeing it'll be a battle to the death. The ref announces start, and Chrollo immediately stabs him with a mind-controlling antenna. This is the first Nen ability Chrollo has borrowed for this fight. Black Voice is fellow spider Shalnark's ability. It allows him to stick antennae into people and give them commands via phone. Chrollo commands the antennaed referee to attack Hisoka, dashing forward with him as if to attempt to stick Hisoka with an antenna as well. Chrollo stomps Hisoka with his foot before Hisoka manages to get away. Interestingly, when he had the chance, Chrollo didn't stab Hisoka with the needle, making the clown believe Chrollo wants a long, drawn-out battle. As Hisoka equates battling with physical intimacy, he gets turned on over the idea. The referee's body then explodes, forcing Hisoka to jump out of the way as Chrollo reveals his second stolen ability, Sun and Moon. Sun and Moon is also our second major example of Nen after death in this arc. Pito's reanimated corpse was our first look at the concept in action during the Chimera Ant arc, and then the conjured Succession War blood urn was a more recent example. Nen after death, a concept which will be emphasized again and again in this arc, is the idea that strong emotions and willpower can cause a Nen ability to persist after the user dies. Pito's body was reanimated out of a desire to protect the Ant King, and the blood urn still exists even centuries later out of the ancient Kakin King's desire to foster a strong country. Sun and Moon was the Nen ability of the leader of Meteor City, and although the man is now dead, it persists in Chrollo's book due to the Elder's lasting willpower to protect the people of his city, even though usually when a Nen user dies, Chrollo loses the ability he stole from them. Chrollo and the spiders being from Meteor City, they now carry some of that responsibility as well to help protect the place. Sun and Moon manifests as two markings, the one on the backs of each of Chrollo's hands. By touching people or objects, Chrollo imprints either a sun or moon mark on them, the mark decided by which hand he touches them with. The plus and minus marks last forever, and if a sun and moon mark ever touch, a bomb-like explosion occurs. Hisoka asks why Chrollo is revealing so much about his abilities because, remember, information is critical in this series. It's invaluable and isn't given out freely. And Chrollo smiles, saying it's stylish to reveal his hand, displaying complete confidence in his ability. In the past, Chrollo has had to hold the book open with his right hand to use an ability stored inside, but since some Nen abilities require the use of his right hand, he's since developed a new ability which allows him to bookmark a page, close the book, and still use the ability. So if Chrollo has both the book open and a page bookmarked, he can use two abilities at the same time. Chrollo says he brought 3 more stolen abilities to the fight, 5 in total, making this the greatest number of abilities it's ever taken him to kill someone. Chapter 352. The third ability, Order Stamp, allows Chrollo to manipulate 200 plus puppets. Black Voice, the antennae phone one, overrides the willpower of up to 2 humans, allowing specific commands. Order Stamp, on the other hand, controls a great number of puppets, but can only give general commands. It also can't control living people. Corpses don't count as puppets, but using his 4th stolen ability, this one borrowed from fellow spider Cortopi, Gallery Fake, Chrollo can make inanimate copies of objects or people. By order stamping the copy of a person or corpse, Chrollo can give them a simple command like break Hisoka, and the puppets will attempt to decapitate him. As they have no blood or life, stamped puppets will keep going, regardless of injury, until their heads are removed from their bodies, zombie style. Once a puppet's head is removed, it breaks, and the order stamp controlling it will disappear. Until Chrollo deactivates Gallery Fake, however, the puppet parts, the head and body, will remain on the battlefield. Last but not least, Chrollo's 5th stolen ability, Convert Hands, allows Chrollo to switch appearances with someone by touching them with the palms of his hands. Chrollo then tells Hisoka the concept of Nen after death is true, which is something Hisoka didn't previously know about. Finishing his explanation, he then states bluntly his chances of victory are 100%, implying Hisoka has a 0.0% survival rate, asking if the clown still wants to fight. Hisoka replies, "Of course." As they begin, Chrollo thinks, "Humans are so very interesting." Okay, so from here onward, Chrollo starts pulling some BS. A lot of weird stuff happens that is left unexplained, so I'll do my best to summarize what happens for sure, and then we'll theorize about Chrollo's actual actions in the further thought section. Starting the fight, Chrollo bookmarks an ability, seems to pull out Black Voice antennae, stabs 2 audience members, and commands them to attack Hisoka. He then activates Convert Hands and switches appearances with a different audience member to disappear into the crowd of spectators while Hisoka is distracted by the antennae men attacking him. Chapter 353. After killing the antennae men, Hisoka notices the antennae have vanished, which is strange because the Black Voice antennae are physical objects. They aren't created from aura and shouldn't just vanish. A bunch of order-stamped gallery fake puppets attack him, breaking his train of thought, and he Spider-Mans up to the ceiling with bungee gum in an attempt to escape. While he's midair and distracted, Chrollo, dressed in an audience member's clothing, changes stances midair and kicks Hisoka down to the ground. Stamped puppets swarm Hisoka, and Chrollo uses the opportunity to land 2 more kicks. Hisoka bungee gums a decapitated puppet head and tries to hit Chrollo with it, but he dodges and stomps Hisoka again. Chapter 354. Bungeeing another puppet head, Hisoka manages to strike Chrollo in the side with the equivalent force of a bowling ball on a string. The Heavens Arena match commentator yells out in excitement over Hisoka's hit. Amusingly, even though the dudes are straight up killing a bunch of spectators, most of the audience is just sitting there eating their popcorn and still watching, having a good time and just chilling. Hisoka crowd controls by swinging the bowling ball head on a string around, and Chrollo disappears into the crowd again after squatting down over a puppet body and touching it while pretending to recover his breath. Once Hisoka eliminates all but 1 stamped puppet in the swarm attacking him, Chrollo deactivates Order Stamp. Spotting someone who looks like Chrollo in the crowd, Hisoka chases him down and kills him, only to find out it wasn't Chrollo but an audience member Chrollo switched appearances with using Convert Hands and manipulated into running from Hisoka using Black Voice. Hisoka crushes 1 Black Voice antenna in his hand after finding it on the dead man's neck. That's 1 antenna down, Chrollo has 1 left at this point. Hisoka then realizes puppet parts marked with sun and moon, the bomb one, don't vanish. So if the puppets are marked with sun and moon, Chrollo doesn't have to keep gallery fake activated to have puppets to control, freeing up an ability slot. Chapter 355. Chrollo borrows the Heavens Arena commentator's mic for a second and broadcasts the command, "Break Hisoka," to every stamped puppet in the crowd. Hundreds of puppets swarm Hisoka, who bungees a bunch of puppets together in a giant flail, swinging them around to crowd control. Hidden in the crowd, Chrollo gives a Black Voice antenna man a command to get in position. Hisoka grabs the puppet head he's been using as a bowling ball on a string with his left hand, but this time, it's a mistake. Chrollo marked the body of this specific puppet head with a sun and moon bomb mark when he was pretending to recover earlier. He then marked an antenna man with the opposite mark. When the antenna man touches the head's body as commanded, 2 marks collide, causing both the puppet body and head to explode. The puppet head and body are considered the same object, so the marks touching result in 2 separate explosions. The head's explosion vaporizes the fingers of Hisoka's left hand, and the body's explosion vaporizes Chrollo's last antenna, so he can't use Black Voice from here onward. I had to re-record the first half of this video, so starting from here onward, the audio might sound a little different. Thanks for bearing with it. Chapter 356. Understanding things are getting dire, Hisoka stops analyzing Chrollo's strategy and just starts acting. He Spider-Mans up to the second floor of the arena, spider running around the walls by making his feet sticky with bungee gum aura to get away from the stamped puppets swarming toward him. A bunch of sun and moon stamped bomb puppets lean over the second floor railing, exploding next to him, sending him flying across the arena. He tries to Spider-Man to the ceiling again, but realizes his right foot is gone, perhaps vaporized in the explosion. He tries to bungee with his other leg, but Chrollo throws two bodies at him, knocking him toward the ground. As Hisoka falls, stamped puppets scuttle toward him. He realizes he's going to die and gives his Nen ability one last command before puppets swarm him. The giant explosion detonates. Chapter 357. TLDR of Hisoka and Chrollo's battle. Chrollo does best when given time to plan ahead and strategize. By allowing him to choose the time and location of their fight, Hisoka allowed Chrollo too much of an advantage and simultaneously underestimated his opponent. While explaining his abilities before the fight, Chrollo, perhaps by accident, revealed the existence of Nen after death to Hisoka, or the idea that Nen abilities can persist after a user's death with strong enough conviction. Though he put up a good fight, Hisoka ultimately lost the battle and was killed. After the battle, three spiders, Machi, Shalnark, and Kortabi, look down at Hisoka's corpse. Shalnark observes he died of suffocation. There were two types of stamped puppets, the normal ones and the bomb ones. A bunch of normal ones suffocated him when they swarmed him at the end of the battle, their bodies acting as a cushion which protected his body from the explosion of the bomb ones, leaving his corpse mostly intact. This was obviously by accident, so just know that his body isn't completely disintegrated. Shalnark and Kortabi leave after confirming his death, but Machi stays behind to embalm Hisoka's body for burial. Shal whispers Machi is a nice person at heart on the way out, and later we learn yes, this is true. Machi initially learned her ability Nen Stitches to help put the dead to rest by restoring mutilated bodies. Machi thanks Hisoka for helping exorcise Chrollo and prepares her thread. Before she can begin, however, Hisoka's Nen after death activates, his bungee gum performing CPR on his organs, bringing him back to life. Though she's surprised, Machi offers to stitch up Hisoka's wounds as his fingers and foot were disintegrated during the battle. Hisoka has let Machi stitch him up before, but this time he refuses her help after a pause. He stops the bleeding by squeezing his broken blood vessels closed. He then applies a layer of texture surprise to give his destroyed face a normal appearance. Appearance being the keyword here. He also uses texture surprise to create rubber prostheses, fingers, and a foot. Just a note, neither Machi nor Hisoka can regenerate body parts. Hisoka's nose, left fingers, and right foot were vaporized by explosions, so they're pretty much gone forever, unless he can find some sort of healer. Machi's skilled at reconstruction, so she could have probably reduced the scarring, but Hisoka denied her help. If he deactivates texture surprise ever, he's probably going to look like a walking corpse, which I actually really quite want to see because the no nose look on Hisoka looks pretty cool. Sighing, Machi excuses herself, but before she can leave, Hisoka catches her off guard, restraining her with bungee gum and sticking her to the ground. He asks her to take the spiders a message. He'll be hunting them from now on. Basically, Chrollo pissed him off, so now he's going to massacre every member of the spiders, Chrollo's entire family. Machi's temper snaps, but all she can do is scream at him as he walks away, taunting her to try and stop him. Is this a bad time to say Machi's cute? Because yeah, I'm weak for a morally gray healer. It's not the first time, I'm sure it won't be the last. A little later, Chrollo walks down the street, still rocking the cord he stole from some poor schmuck in Heaven's Arena. Just imagining him thrift shopping by stealing other people's outfits he likes is hilarious. Over the phone, he tells Shalnark the spiders will be gathering on board the Black Whale to steal the Kakin royal family's treasures during the voyage. Chrollo asks if Shalnark wants his phone and Black Voice ability back, noting he lost the antennae. Shal says it's okay, and Chrollo agrees to return it when they meet on board. Mr. Lucilfer is our second Antichrist passenger, and he's bringing along his whole chaotic troop. Oh boy, oh boy. After the call ends, Shalnark sees Hisoka walk out of a nearby bathroom with Kortby's severed head in his hand. As his phone rings again, perhaps Chrollo calling to warn him Kortby's ability disappeared from Bandit's secret, indicating Kortby's death. Shal dashes toward Hisoka and catches Kortby's head in his hands as it's thrown at him. Hisoka moves forward, rubber foot squishing as it meets the ground, indicating that yes, it is still just a prosthesis made of rubber and his foot isn't actually healed. In a park, crows pick at the rotting corpses of Shalnark and Kortby. These spiders' bodies have been arranged in sick caricatures of their abilities, Shalnark being strung up on a swing set in a perversion of Black Voice antennae men, and Kortby's severed head representing the broken state of a puppet created by Gallery Fake. Hisoka grins and bloodlust warps his features as he says, 2 down, 10 to go. Yes, there were 12 spiders. Further thoughts? Okay, so first things first, let's try to find some answers for every question I had while reading the fight. I have them all page flagged here in blue, starting from the beginning chronologically. 1. When Chrollo stuck the ref with an antenna and then stomped Hisoka, Hisoka says Chrollo showed he could, quote, insta-kill on purpose, end quote. So Hisoka would be wary of the antenna. At this point, Hisoka wasn't aware Chrollo could control 2 antenna men at once, but Chrollo was. So I guess the question is, why didn't Chrollo stick Hisoka? My preferred explanation for this would probably be Chrollo didn't actually have a clear opening to stick Hisoka with. Hisoka just mistakenly thought he did, since he only had 2 antennae for the entire fight, and they can't be used after they break. Chrollo didn't want to take the chance, seeing he might miss. Question number 2. Next, Chrollo says he has more annoying conditions to deal with as a result of developing his new bookmark addendum. He doesn't reveal what the conditions are, but he fulfilled them before activating it. I'm incredibly curious what the bookmark's conditions are, though lifespan draining or life staking conditions are possible logistically. The self-destructive motif is more Kurapika's thing, so I honestly doubt it. I almost wonder if revealing Nen ability information to his opponent, or his opponent knowing about an ability before he can bookmark it, is the primary condition of the bookmark. Bandit's Secret, the book, has a conversation-related condition already, in that Chrollo needs to have like a little convo with his target before he can steal their ability. So it seems kind of in character for Chrollo. When Hisoka asks why Chrollo is sharing so much information about his abilities, because info is critical in the Nen world, Chrollo claims it's because he wants to show his hand to be classy, but it would align more with his intelligent personality if the actual reason he explained every ability was to disguise the fact he needed to do so to use the bookmark on them. I quite like that idea. If you have any others, please let me know, because this is something I've been extremely curious about. Question number 3. After Chrollo reveals Order Stamp, Hisoka comes to the conclusion humans and puppets can't be controlled together. Why? This is after Chrollo explained Bookmark. So Hisoka knows Chrollo can use 2 abilities at once, but before Chrollo reveals he brought Gallery Fake, so Hisoka doesn't know Chrollo needs another ability to create the puppets. Why didn't Hisoka assume Chrollo brought puppets to control with him, or corpses counted as puppets? I feel like those are 2 logical assumptions, which should lead Hisoka to conclude Chrollo could use both Black Voice and Order Stamp at the same time. I don't have a real answer for this one, to be honest. First possibility is Hisoka sees living people as puppets, and since 2 manipulative abilities can't be active on one person at the same time, he couldn't use Black Voice and Order Stamp on the same person. But that doesn't make sense, because why would Chrollo ever do that? He'd obviously just antenna stab a non-stamped person. Best guess is maybe Hisoka assumes both abilities required real-time commands from Chrollo. Not sure. Fourth question, at the end of his explanation, Chrollo explains one last concept: Nen after death. Why? Somehow Chrollo and Hisoka both instantly linked Nen after death to the sun and moon markings not disappearing if Chrollo deactivates the ability, but gotta be honest, I really don't understand how they got from point A to point B on this one. If explaining an ability is a requirement for Chrollo to use the bookmark on it, Chrollo could have just said, sun and moon markings last forever until they explode even if I deactivate the ability, and that would suffice. Like, why did he bring up the Nen after death concept at all? Yes, it's interesting new information for us, the audience, but this one line is what domino affected into Hisoka living to kill Shal and Cortopi. So I bet Chrollo is feeling real bad for his brief moment of cockiness now. Question 5. After Hisoka dispatches 2 antenna men and loses Chrollo in the crowd, he looks back down and notices the Black Voice antennae are gone. As Shalnark seems to use a physical phone and antennae for his ability, Hisoka guesses maybe Chrollo had fishing line tied to the antenna to reel them back in with. Is he right? The antenna and phone do seem to be physical objects, as opposed to Nen conjured items which would just vanish and reappear. Because later, while on the phone to Shal, Chrollo says he'll return the physical phone to him, but he lost the antennae. I'd guess Shal orders/designs custom items for Black Voice to suit both his tastes and power, so he can get replacements, he just can't conjure them out of nowhere mid-battle. Now, as to how Chrollo retrieved them mid-combat, not a fan of the fishing line explanation, but I can't think of a better one. So maybe he just used the fishing line for that one maneuver and untied the antennae afterwards, so Hisoka couldn't use the string to track back to him. Question number 6. When Hisoka Spider-Mans up into the air to escape the stamped puppet swarm, Chrollo attacks him from behind. Chrollo begins to punch with his left fist forward, but somehow switches to a kick with his right leg mid-action. Hisoka questions how Chrollo modified his attack angle mid-air, and yeah, how did he do that? Our only hint is this SFX bubble which trails from Chrollo's fist with the ft sound effect in it. At first I thought maybe Chrollo grabbed Hisoka's bungee gum strand and used it as leverage to swing his leg around, changing directions mid-air, but Hisoka would probably feel that, like how a spider feels disturbance on his web, so then he would understand what happened and he wouldn't be questioning it. Second idea was maybe Chrollo used sun and moon to create a little mid-air explosion to propel him in the opposing direction, but the backs of his hands seem to be blank in the scene, so it's unlikely sun and moon is active. Third possibility, Chrollo ordered an antenna man to throw something at him mid-air so he could push off against it to change directions. The only ability he has active for sure in the scene is Order Stamp, so he has an empty slot he could use another ability with. Maybe the antenna man could be holding a bundle of fishing line / rope instead, and Chrollo could be swinging on it. In that scene, Chrollo's fist wouldn't be clenched because he was going to punch Hisoka, but rather because he was holding onto a rope. I actually quite like that explanation. The last two theories are more realistic quotation marks, but less cool, I think, so I do prefer them less than the fishing line explanation. Fourth possibility is Chrollo could have used a sixth stolen ability which he didn't reveal to Hisoka at the beginning. This would open up any number of possibilities for Chrollo's mid-air stance change, but it would mean Chrollo would be less intimidating as he'd need a sixth ability. And last option is Chrollo didn't actually change stances, Hisoka just thought he did. Perhaps because he read Chrollo's body language wrong, or perhaps Chrollo projected his bloodlust in a specific way to fool Hisoka. There is a precedent for this when Jing showed off his bloodlust as like a sort of barrage of punches that didn't actually happen when he was confronting that one Beyond team member. So it's like an alright explanation. Number 7, my real last question of the battle is, Shalnark, Kortopi, and Machi gather around Hisoka's dead body after the fight. Why these three in particular, and why were they in the vicinity? It's definitely an oversight on his part that Chrollo didn't personally confirm Hisoka's death, but he does trust the other members entirely, so it makes sense he'd entrust the task to them. Additionally, I guess he couldn't have really anticipated Hisoka could come back to life using Nen after death, especially after just hearing about it once. Machi was paid by Hisoka in advance, so it makes sense she was waiting for him as he's hired her in the past for post-fighting healing. Shalnark and Kortopi though, the most reasonable guess is that they were sticking around so Chrollo could return their Nen abilities as soon as possible, but Chrollo didn't end up returning them, and it didn't seem there was any urgency for him to do so. With Shal, Kortopi, and Machi in particular, there's a theory that they were close by because they were helping Chrollo during the battle. This would help explain some odd points of the fight. For example, the mid-air stance change could be explained by Chrollo holding onto Machi's Nen thread, and the vast number of puppets could be explained by Kortopi making fakes while Chrollo does other stuff, but I don't like the theory personally. Chrollo probably wouldn't see it as cheating because he sees the other spiders as a part of him, part of his identity, but it makes him feel less intimidating. Chrollo had plenty of time to set up, he chose the arena and the date, he gathered 5 Nen abilities specifically to counter Hisoka. I just don't think he should need extra help at this point. My best guess as to why Shal and Kortopi were there with Machi is probably just that Togashi wanted to give them a little extra screen time before offing them. Author's notes about the fight. Hisoka and Chrollo's fight was extremely controversial, especially the ending with Hisoka coming back to life, and likely influenced by public reception. The mangaka included an author's note about the fight at the end of the volume. Let me just read it out real quick. Quote, "There were several things I wanted to do with the battle. First and foremost, the fight itself. I love stories where the enemies of the protagonists fight each other. One of the most exciting ones was when Tosamaru High School played Benkei High School in the baseball manga Dokubon. I really wanted to do that kind of thing in my manga. I took care to let both of them, Chrollo and Hisoka, show their manhood and portray a clear, decisive outcome. While fun, a tough thing to do. The other thing I wanted to do was have someone say, 'I'll win 100% and then really do it.' The guy who says something like that generally loses." And then about the aftermath of the fight, quote, "What I wanted to do most was have him, Hisoka, kill someone in the troop. I knew how the story was going to work out, but I hadn't decided who Hisoka would kill at the end. Hisoka wanted to kill Machi then and there, but I vetoed it. To lead into the voyage arc, I needed a messenger to deliver the news to the other troop members. He killed Kortopi and Shalnark as part of his post-mortem analysis of his performance in the fight, as well as for revenge, and I also wanted to show how serious Hisoka was through his cold and calculating judgment in reducing Chrollo's roster of abilities, is my excuse after the fact. It was my hunch that letting Machi stick around would make it more interesting later on. This came up in my joint interview with Kishimoto, the creator of Naruto, but I have a blueprint in my head when I'm writing the story, meaning I can put everything into words, and upon actually thinking things through, I often come to the conclusion that following the blueprint is indeed the interesting path. But when the distant future is still murky, who you choose to save or let go relies solely on intuition. I hope I don't come to regret it." End quote. I sort of wish he would have confirmed Chrollo didn't cheat, but a lot of fun stuff to unpack nevertheless. Firstly, yes, Chrollo's victory is meant to be clear and absolute. He had the upper hand the entire time, and as soon as Hisoka stepped into the arena, he pretty much had already lost. Secondly, Hisoka almost killed Machi after the fight. It seems to be a decision Togashi struggled with, but I'm glad he let her live. Shal and Kortopi are great, but we've seen the extent of their abilities for the most part. Machi has an interesting perceptive ability to have accurate hunches about things, and it's already starting to prove interesting on the voyage. Even if it's reasoning generated after the fact, Hisoka killing Shal and Kortopi as a post-mortem for the fight is fantastic. Though it's a technical possibility Black Voice and Gallery Fake could remain in the book due to Nen after death, I don't think they will. Just from what Togashi said here and the general vibe, I think Chrollo will be forced to think on his feet more during the voyage and show us new interesting abilities. Nen abilities are a part of the user's identity, and to truly sever Shal and Kortopi from Chrollo, their Nen abilities should be severed as well. Chrollo's fight strategy. In addition to playing to his strengths with the fight setup and strategy, Chrollo shows his intelligence in this battle by purposefully misleading Hisoka with his words. During his Nen ability explanations, he words things in specific ways to lead Hisoka to wrong assumptions. For example, Chrollo claims he developed the bookmark after gaining an ability which requires both hands, leading both us and Hisoka to assume Sun and Moon requires both hands and can only be used with the bookmark and the book closed. That's not true. Sun and Moon can be used one hand at a time, allowing Chrollo to use his full two abilities with Sun and Moon active. Then he states the bookmark allows him to make combos, but the true advantage is not having to hold the book. This is highly misleading because in the fight, the most important aspect of the bookmark is clearly the combo aspect. The combination of Sun and Moon bomb marks and Gallery Fake is critical. But Chrollo doesn't even try to hide the book. Hiding the book is a non-factor. By labeling not having to hold the book as the true advantage, Chrollo draws our attention to the wrong thing without outright lying. And last example, Chrollo states when a puppet vanishes, Hisoka can assume Gallery Fake has been deactivated, meaning he switched abilities. This makes us and Hisoka automatically assume the inverse, that if a puppet is still on the field, Gallery Fake is still active. But that's not true. Sun and Moon bomb marks bypass this law. Puppets with bomb marks remain on the field even if Gallery Fake is deactivated. So yeah, just a bunch of mental traps on top of all of his pre-game setups. Shalnark. In addition to losing a dear childhood friend, Chrollo lost a valuable asset with Shalnark's death. Shal was essentially the hacker and informant of the spiders. Additionally, Shal was a stabilizing presence for the group. Where other members like Phaeton and Nobunaga are prone to fighting and leaps of logic, Shal did his best to mitigate conflict and think rationally. When Nobunaga attempted to attack Hisoka after reading his fortune, for example, In the Yorknew arc,
Calm down, alright?
Shalnark stepped between them until Chrollo resolved the situation. Even without his Nen ability, he was invaluable. The spiders losing Shal is not good. His death almost feels like a death flag for the spider, the troop itself. One less anchor of stability, one step closer to chaos. Interestingly, Shalnark's death bears some resemblance to the fortune he received in Yorknew from an ability which had the power to predict the next 2 weeks of a person's life. Shal's fortune read, "Even just one call you must not make. When needed most, it won't connect. To answer your phone is another mistake. 1 time in 3, the Reaper calls collect." While the fortune has long since expired, and the details aren't important, it's just some beautiful foreshadowing to the circumstances surrounding his actual death. The line, "When needed most, it won't connect," referring now to the fact Shalnark didn't have his phone and ability when he needed it most. Chrollo perhaps also tried to call with a warning, but the call didn't connect, as Shalnark didn't answer the phone in that moment. The Reaper calls collect refers to both Death and Hisoka here, and it's just so satisfying somehow. About the fortunes though, there's a certain other spider who received a tiding of death in Yorknew, and her fortune also foreshadows how she might die, perhaps. I can't wait for that, honestly. It's going to be so good, especially when Chrollo finds her body, perhaps in a chamber of treasure. And who owns the treasure the spiders came on board to steal? The royal family. And what monster of the royal family has a penchant for adding young ladies to his gruesome treasure room or chamber? It would be so good if he found her body in there. Anyways, Shalnark was just such a cool cat in general. Never forget Togashi used Shalnark's Nen ability splash page as an excuse to draw a thirst trap of him. Everyone else just looked normal in theirs, and Shal's was ripped straight out of a Calvin Klein magazine. R.I.P. legend. Chrollo's views. And a last few thoughts on Chrollo before we wrap up this section. We'll analyze him further after his backstory chapters, chapter 395 or so we still have a while to go until that, but during this fight we did learn something quite interesting about his stolen abilities. He must adhere to the original owner's definitions and morals regarding the ability. For example, although Chrollo considers human corpses to be objects, to be puppets, the original owner of Order Stamp didn't think the same way. The original owner saw corpses as once living beings and didn't want to desecrate them, so Chrollo can't order stamp corpses. After explaining this, Chrollo says, quote, "Making the ability yours while exploring the darkness within the soul of the original owner. That's the true pleasure of a skill hunter." A lot of interesting implications from this one line. Notably, Chrollo sees abilities he steals as his own. Aside from the abilities he borrows from other spiders, who again he considers a part of himself, we never actually see him make any effort to return the abilities he takes. He's a thief, a bandit, and rather than borrowing, it seems he's actively trying to enfold others' identities into him through familiarizing himself with their Nen abilities. Compare Chrollo's take and devour style of stealing ability to Kurapika's take but spit back out after using style Stealth Dolphin, and yeah, it's all very interesting. Perhaps the most characteristic moment of the fight, however, is Chrollo offering Hisoka one last exit after revealing his hand at the start of the match. He showed Hisoka the odds, expecting him to perhaps back down. If he were in the same situation, Chrollo would have absolutely taken the out. He is a logical person and he understands if the chances of death are high, it's not smart to keep going. But Chrollo doesn't understand Hisoka. Hisoka answers, Of course, he'll continue. The way Chrollo's eyes darken as he thinks humans are so very interesting, bone-chilling, honestly. I think Hisoka managed to coax a little bloodlust, a little bit of rare bloodlust from Chrollo here. He looks like he wants to strap Hisoka to a table and live dissect him on the spot to see what makes him tick. He looks like he wants to cut Hisoka's brain open and sort of poke around in there. Scary. Though there's some sort of cosmic irony to the fact that Chrollo's whole deal is studying humans to understand them, yet he can't understand Hisoka. At the end of the day, that shortcoming is what ultimately led to Shao and Courtepy's deaths. Chrollo may have won the battle, but he started a war. Hisoka may have lost the moment he stepped foot into Heaven's arena, but you could almost say Chrollo lost the moment he accepted Hisoka's fight challenge. Oof, yeah. Questions and theories. Did Chrollo cheat? Well, what counts as cheating? I think other spiders actively helping him during the fight, or Chrollo whipping out a 6th Nen ability out of thin air would be cheating to me, and there's nothing which would really necessitate it in this fight. But there are a couple aspects which could be better explained with a little bit of extra prep, if that's allowed. My main hangup of the battle is just how quickly Chrollo cloned and stamped puppets. Yeah, it's logistically possible combo-wise, but over the span of less than 10 minutes, Chrollo somehow clones hundreds of people, as stated by the referee, and stamps them all. Yes, Chrollo is fast, but he'd have to move at basically super speed. Two explanations for this would be, one, it's a manga, just accept it, or two, Chrollo cloned some people ahead of time and spread them throughout the audience before the fight started. As Chrollo isn't using Nen to enhance his movement speed, it's just kind of hard to suspend my disbelief about his sonic speed here unless one of the abilities has a contagious / self-multiplying aspect we weren't aware of. For example, if a stamp puppet touches another puppet, does that puppet he touches also get the stamp? Like, there's no evidence for or against that. I could go either way on the puppet swarm explanation, to be honest. Either he did some extra cloning ahead of time, or we should just suspend our disbelief. No real preference. And then the second sticking point is, what fishing line was used to reel in the Black Voice antennae and swing on during the mid-air attack? Well, what if Chrollo asked Machi for a couple lengths of her Nen thread? Machi's thread is super strong. 1 meter of it can lift a ton in weight, and although its lifting strength is significantly reduced when disconnected from Machi, Chrollo weighs way less than 2,000 pounds. So even if it was like cut in half and then half again and then half again, I think it could still support Chrollo's weight. With a couple strands bundled together, I'm sure it could hold him for a quick maneuver without being visible to Hisoka or us, the reader. And I mean, weapons were allowed in the fight, so bringing the equivalent of a bundle of fishing line wouldn't technically be cheating. Long story short, Chrollo probably wasn't cheating, at least not seriously. Why is Hisoka mad about losing? Didn't he want to fight? Throughout HunterxHunter, we see Hisoka constantly looking for strong opponents. He seems to love fighting, and he spent ages trying to set up a match with Chrollo in particular. So why is he being such a sore loser about Chrollo defeating him? His anger might make sense if Chrollo cheated, but Chrollo probably didn't, and Hisoka was the one who allowed Chrollo to gather 5 Nen abilities and set the battlefield. Well, I guess we've just never seen Hisoka lose before. No matter the opponent, Hisoka has always come out on top in the past, and top is the important word here. Hisoka canonically gets off on fighting strong opponents, and the mere act of fighting seems to be linked to an erotic experience for him. In past fights, he's always been in control, but this time he was caught off guard. Chrollo made him bottom, and yeah, Hisoka realized he didn't like that at all. It's likely he felt his pride was insulted in some way, and now he wants to force Chrollo to submit to him by any means necessary. Which, I mean, it is fair Hisoka has a preference, but he's also kind of the one at fault for underestimating Chrollo in the first place, so... Another explanation would be Hisoka didn't have the pleasurable time he thought he would. After building up the fight so much in his mind, he thought he'd enjoy it more, but Chrollo was rather discourteous in bringing so many Nen abilities, and it was too one-sided. Hisoka made some allowances for Chrollo. He politely waited until Chrollo was ready. After Chrollo revealed 2 abilities and the bookmark, Hisoka notably says, quote, "As long as you can fight comfortably, a battle is a dance. We must move to each other's beat," with a sing-song tone. At this point, he seems alright with the abilities Chrollo brought. A little give and take is acceptable to him. But then, Chrollo goes on to rattle off 3 more abilities, and Hisoka notably begins to look a little annoyed. Eventually, he realizes that Chrollo doesn't care about the give and take aspect of fighting which Hisoka enjoys. The entire time, Chrollo has control. He stays mostly out of reach, and he doesn't allow Hisoka to move around much using bungee gum. Chrollo refuses to move to Hisoka's beat, even after Hisoka was so kind to make allowances to move to Chrollo's beat. Hisoka was looking forward to the fight, but when it finally happened, the sex was bad. I guess it's probably a bit of all 3 explanations. Hisoka didn't have a good time, and his pride was insulted, and he realized he doesn't like to lose. Why did Hisoka decide to kill the spiders? Given the previous reasoning, it would make sense if Hisoka wanted to kill Chrollo, but why did he extend his vengeance to the entire troop? Notably, after the battle, there are a couple of panels which I feel are an important turning point for Hisoka's mentality. After being revived, he says, "Reality is harsh, it's difficult to win under your opponent's ideal conditions." And then Machi gently scolds him, saying, quote, "If you've learned your lesson, be sure to pick your battles next time," end quote. Hisoka makes this face as a reaction to her words, and I think it's this exact moment where Hisoka decides to kill the spiders. Though he's let Machi heal him before, after this panel he turns her down despite her willingness to stitch him up. He won't accept her help anymore because he's decided she's now an enemy. Then, after he restrains her, as a direct response to her words, he says, "I've decided not to pick my battles, not with the spiders." He asks her to inform the other spiders he'll fight them on sight until he's killed them all. How did Machi's advice lead him to decide on mass murder? It's likely to do with Hisoka's philosophy toward fighting and life in general. I didn't understand Hisoka for the longest time until an analyzer, I'll link their video below, described him as a hedonist. Then everything clicked. Hedonism is the philosophy that pursuing pleasure is the proper aim of human life. Basically, that everyone should strive for what pleasures them. Hedonism states, satisfying desires is the meaning of life itself. Under this philosophy, Hisoka constantly searching for strong opponents to fight makes sense because fights bring him pleasure. By planning fights and fighting, Hisoka is fulfilling his purpose in life. He's pursuing his pleasures. But then, after his loss to Chrollo, Machi tells him he needs to pick his battles, essentially advising him to restrain himself, and Hisoka takes umbrage at the idea. Why should he have to restrain himself from battling when battling brings him pleasure, and pleasure is the only thing of value in life. While Machi was simply giving him a little advice, due to Hisoka's life philosophy, he saw it as an attack on his values. His defeat by Chrollo was now somehow linked to a threat on his very being. What better way to reject the sentiment behind Machi's words than by directly doing the opposite? Machi said, "Pick your battles, especially with the spiders," and Hisoka decided, "I won't pick my battles, especially not with the spiders." She warned him to use his brain, not his dick, and in response he decided to double down and pursue the pleasure of fighting every single spider. Yes, there are logical explanations for Hisoka targeting the spiders first, that cutting off the spider's legs would weaken Chrollo by reducing the abilities available to him, that killing his family would hurt Chrollo psychologically, that reducing spiders would reduce possible interference in a future rematch against Chrollo, etc., etc. But for Hisoka, I think the process itself, not just the end goal, should be enjoyable as well, just because of the type of person he is. And deciding to go wild with his pursuit of pleasure in fighting every single spider on his way to Chrollo definitely feels fun and murder clownish. It just feels right, you know? How much has Hisoka changed mentally? What about physically? Is Hisoka stronger now? Due to the previous reasoning, I feel like Hisoka actually hasn't changed that much mentally at all. Rather, I'd consider it likely he's doubled down on his values. This will be important later on the ship, where Hisoka seems to be acting very differently, more subdued and serious almost. While I don't think seriousness is out of the question for Hisoka, we shouldn't hand-wave the oddity of his drastically different demeanor by just saying he got whooped by Chrollo, so he's a completely different person now. I think we should be careful with assumptions and maybe think about it a little bit more. As for changes in his strength, it takes strong willpower for Nen After Death to activate, but now that Hisoka is alive again, is his Nen stronger because he had the will to survive? This is actually a tough question because we've never seen someone use Nen After Death to come back to life. Previous examples of Nen After Death seem overpowered and super strong, but they're still after death. Pito's corpse was tough and fast. The blood urn seems to have incredible power, but both their users are dead. Do you think dying briefly and having Bungee Gum activate as Nen After Death permanently boosted Hisoka's Nen power? I could go either way on it, honestly. I do love that Hisoka's physical body is permanently jacked up now though. Since he's a physical fighter, he'll be forced to somewhat adapt his fighting strategy anyways, but a boost in Nen power could cause some fun changes in his style. He could go from more physical and precise to more strategic, potentially, because he lost some of that precision with his fingers. Hisoka's not my favorite character in Hunter x Hunter, but I hope he's still strong enough to take out a couple of the stronger spiders, specifically Franklin. I really hope Hisoka kills Franklin because their fight would be so epic and Chrollo would spiral further into instability. Chrollo's always so put together and, you know, it would be fun to see him a little more unhinged. Final thoughts. Overall, a fantastic fight. Perhaps more hype than the actual action was just Chrollo and Hisoka's underlying personalities and philosophies. The clash between Chrollo's calculating preparation and Hisoka's spontaneous pursuit of pleasure was just so cool. We got to see Hisoka underestimating Chrollo's planning and intelligence, and Chrollo underestimating Hisoka's willpower and beliefs. Chrollo may have won the fight, but did he truly win in the long run? Debatable. The fight got super complicated since both are tactically intelligent, but taking a step back from all the technical details, we realized that this was the only possible outcome to a battle between these two characters. Because of how Chrollo and Hisoka are as people, because of their life philosophies, it could only have ever played out like this. And I think that's masterful writing. Although the Dark Continent prep arc technically ended in chapter 348, this is where I personally consider the arc ends because Hisoka versus Chrollo is still set up for the voyage. The next video will cover chapter 358, which is what I consider the official start of the Succession War arc, because we'll be boarding the actual ship itself and setting sail. Also, if you have any theories / ideas about some of the questions I raised for this battle, please share them. I love hearing other people's thoughts and reading people's analysis essays and stuff. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, Sar signing off.